245 GSV 417. It's going to be at Alexandria College.
Active
Multiple
shooter.
victims down.
A gunman or gunmen killing or attempting to kill people in a confined, populated area.
Students, parents, teachers are asking why today, after a bloody rampage, plunged this campus into tragedy.
Tab Talks presents a modern fairy tale. Once upon a time, when schools were safe. Hi, this is Dr. Michelle, and today we are going to be talking about, is it safe in our schools? And I guess I want to start off by saying we at some point thought that school shootings were not common, but we're beginning to see that they're very, very common. And so we're going to look at some of the research and show you some very provocative and innovative public service announcements that have been created to try to get the attention of America, that this is a significant problem and one that's not going to go away anytime soon. So without further ado, first up, I want to thank the Sandy Hook Promise organization. They're a nonprofit group of parents who came together after the shooting at Sandy Hook in 2012, where there were 27 children who died. And they have put together some very innovative public service announcements so that they keep our attention that this is real and this continues to happen. So we're going to roll that.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Can you give us an example of what students are expected to do if an intruder enters the classroom?
If an intruder comes into the classroom, the students are expected to protect themselves. Get help if you can get help. Escape if you can escape. I guess it's kind of case by case. But those are the things, some of the things that they should be doing is to make sure that they're protected and be ready to counter.
And this PSA was put together by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Oh my God!
There's somebody shooting.
Everybody stay calm. Remember how we train. Everybody get in this corner, away from the windows. Get the emergency bag from my desk. Help her.
Drywall won't stop a bullet, but there are steps to take to stay safe. Lock or barricade the doors, turn off the lights, move away from any windows, and silence your cell phone.
The other door doesn't lock. Move desks or anything, just block it.
A modern emergency bag can include a first aid kit, gloves, emergency plans for the building, and casualty cards to alert first responders to any wounded victims.
Most active shooter situations are over in 10 to 15 minutes.
You know, we've talked about what the students do to keep themselves safe. So what do you as a high school teacher do personally to keep yourself safe?
I personally keep my desk is always against the wall, where my back is against the wall, so I can see the classroom and the door. I don't like for my back to be to the door. I have to make sure that I have eyes on all of the students, so I make sure that I position myself where I can see my students at all times and anyone that comes into the door. And I make sure that I have a good. I'm seated in a position to where I can get to either the phone, or there's a little black button on the wall that we can call that directly goes to the office. I make sure that I'm positioned to be able to get to those things, and yeah, that's basically what I do to keep myself safe.
Now, there was a recent study by Langman in 2015, and he noted some very interesting things about the actual shooters. He did a very extensive study on shooters, and it was interesting that he said that many of the perpetrators were between the ages of 10 and 19. Now, these are people whose brains aren't even fully developed yet. So we see violence happening at very young ages. The frontal lobes, which is home to key components of the neural circuitry underlying executive functions such as planning, working memory, and impulse control, are among the last areas of the brain to mature. They may not be fully developed until halfway through the third decade of life. He also points out that the majority of perpetrators were not bullied. In fact, 60% were not bullied. So we can't say, well, because the bullying happened and that's why they did it. That happens in some cases, but most times not. And what I found was the most shocking is who they actually target. They typically are not targeting the kids who bullied them. They're typically targeting teachers, administrators, predominantly attacking females and women, because it's predominantly male who is doing these shootings. They attack women or girls who have rejected them. So it sounds like very frail, fragile ego, and this is who's being attacked. Now, I think the one misnomer about all of this is that there is an issue with mental illness. And we're trying to say that because these people are mentally ill, that's why they're doing that. But I came up with actually a list of other what they call risk factors. And I don't think we don't hear about these as much. And I like to go over them because I thought they were pretty fascinating, actually. Gender was male. We know that predominantly the shooters are male. They exhibited early childhood aggressive behavior. So I would imagine this is the child who's killing cats, killing dogs, just engaging in very aggressive behavior. They tend to have dark personality traits. So maybe this is a person who is alone or isolated, doesn't really talk to people. And we've all met people that, we kind of joke about that, but it's not really funny when we say, okay, that's going to be the next, mass murderer. Well, sometimes people have been right when they've said that about people because their affect is a little different. Maybe they have obsessions with death, with weapons. I know that I worked with a colleague and we were all pretty taken aback with their fascination with guns. I was talking about guns, and it kind of sometimes made us uncomfortable because they talked about it so much. I know this is a subject that keeps coming up, but what do you feel are the implications of teachers being armed in the classroom?
As far as teachers being armed in a class, I never thought that would be a question. As far as I'm concerned, I would never feel comfortable with having a firearm. I would never feel comfortable with another colleague or a teacher having a firearm. However, if there was security and they were trained and that was their main job, I would feel okay with that. But in the classroom, no, I don't think that that would be a smart idea. And from what I feel and the feeling that I've gotten from other teachers or colleagues is they wouldn't feel comfortable as well.
And then they looked at the environmental factors. Do you have an access to a gun? So if there are guns in the homes, they're not locked. You can easily go into a home and you can see one on the mantelpiece, one in the drawer, no safety locks. That's an environmental factor. Or if the person is isolated in their room, we know that in the Columbine shootings, those kids had all kinds of things in their rooms and their parents never went in and checked. So, while you're not trying to be a helicopter mom, if your kids are in rooms building bombs or they're, building weapons or doing weaponry, I think if this is happening under the roof in your house, you need to have better surveillance. Then they talk about that there was media violence, that we see copycat killers. And we're going to talk about these copycat crimes because we now see, in Sandy Hook that, the shooter shoots the children, he kills himself, he also shot his mother. Well, we see in Uvalde, the shooter kills children, he's killed, and I'm sure he probably planned to kill himself because he's obviously was on a suicide mission. And I think they know when they go in, it's a suicide mission. And he attempted to kill his grandmother. He just wasn't successful. And then we look at the school characteristics itself. And, one thing we look at, when I talked about the students go after administrators, we have to be careful in terms of how we discipline. We always say you discipline in private and you praise in public. Well, if you're one of those administrators or you're one of those bosses who you like to pull people out and call them out and humiliate them or give them punishing evaluations without giving them praise, you don't know where people's buttons are, and you don't know if you push them to an edge where they don't have the coping skill to bounce back from that. Some people just don't have the coping skills to bounce back from heavy criticism. So you've now criticized this person, they're humiliated, and they feel like they have to do something. So I would suggest that, we as a society have to look at, I understand everyone is talking about their rights, their Second Amendment rights, their First Amendment rights. I have the right to say what I want to say, and I have the right to bear arms. Well, I have the right to expect a child to go to school and come home safely. And I have the right to expect a person that is troubled or isolated, that there are mental health services for them so that they don't have to act out in these ways. And we have a right not to try to come up with really cute and curt answers that say, well, these are mentally ill people. Well, many of these shootings are not done by mentally ill people. There are other environmental factors that we have to look at. At one point, the financial condition of the schools required them to get rid of what they called non-essential personnel, and that kind of meant nurses and social workers. Are you seeing a trend in the return of these vital services?
At our school, mental health is taken seriously. We have mental health providers in our building. We also have school nurses in our building. I'm not sure that our district has gotten to the place where that's ever questioned if that's a need or not. So as far as it being on the chopping blocks to save money, I'm not sure that that is something that's going on in our district. So, I think we're well equipped in that area.
And, we all want to talk about mass shootings because we all know a mass shooting is defined as 4 or more. But regrettably, when you look at the statistics in terms of what's happening in today's schools, 80% of the schools in the research are reporting that they have had one or more incidents of a violent theft or crime that has happened inside these schools. So there's a reason that you're seeing metal detectors. There's a reason that you're seeing security guards in schools. It's because the schools and some of the aggression you're seeing is just, to me, an imitation of the world around us. I just commented that 80% of our schools are reporting that they're having incidents of violence and crimes. So how is that impacting the education of our children?
Violence in school. Violence in school, I think, even since I've started teaching, and it's been 9 years now, I think it has increased. I want to say that maybe because of the things that our children are seeing now on TV has an effect on it. But I'm not sure. It seems that there are, there's bullying going on. There's fights. I'm not sure that there are ways that children have to cope with things. Definitely not in a way that is safe. I think some of these videos, TikTok videos, social media, makes it seem cool for kids to be a little bit more violent and to make choices not to use coping skills and going to another teacher or an adult in the building. I think they feel that they have to take it upon themselves, and especially when someone's approaching you to fight. I think that sometimes students feel like, they're going to be talked about or thought as lame, so to speak, if they don't immediately respond to disrespect. It's impacting our schools greatly. It interferes with the lessons that go on in school. It just kind of puts a damper on things just in general. One thing, as a teacher, I don't like to have to worry about those things. I typically think that I have really good classroom management skills. So I tend to not have to worry about those things. But it does happen, and it happens more than it should.
So in light of all the violence, what happens to a child when they bring a weapon to school? And are you finding that males and females receive the same level and type of disciplinary action?
When a child brings a weapon to school, it's immediately dealt with from the administration and security. And as far as male and female disciplinary actions, I'm pretty sure that they are dealt with the same. I personally have not had many occasions where this had even come up, so probably not the best person to answer that question.
I think what's been interesting is there's this statistic that's been widely publicized that since 2009, there have been 288 school shootings in the United States, and they compare this number to other countries. But what's interesting is the period of time that we look at that 288 school shootings is from 2009 to 2019. So that's not really the real number, everybody, because you have to look before 2009 and then you have to look after 2019. And if you're only looking at mass shootings, you're not looking at the individual shootings that are happening in these schools. There are some databases that say that number is much higher. That number is more like over 2,000.
Since 2006, the U.S. has averaged an active shooter event with 4 or more deaths every 2.9 months.
And we have to look at our politicians to see what they have to say about it. And I'm going to share.
What are we doing? What are we doing? Just days after a shooter walked into a grocery store to gun down African American patrons, we have another Sandy Hook on our hands. What are we doing? There have been more mass shootings than days in the year. Our kids are living in fear every single time they set foot in a classroom because they think they're going to be next. What are we doing? Why do you spend all this time running for the United States Senate? Why do you go through all the hassle of getting this job, of putting yourself in a position of authority, if your answer is that as this slaughter increases, as our kids run for their lives, we do nothing? What are we doing? Why are you here? If not to solve a problem as existential as this. This isn't inevitable. These kids weren't unlucky. This only happens in this country and nowhere else. Nowhere else do little kids go to school thinking that they might be shot that day. Nowhere else do parents have to talk to their kids, as I have had to do, about why they got locked into a bathroom and told to be quiet for 5 minutes just in case a bad man entered that building. Nowhere else does that happen except here in the United States of America, and it is a choice. It is our choice to let it continue.
My last word would be love. Love one another. Love on each other. Listen to each other. Listen to your children. Listen to the teachers. I think we tend to have a lot to say instead of listening. So love and listen. Love and listen. Thank you.
I'm going to challenge people. If you don't know what to do, there are a lot of organizations that are out there trying to do something about this horrendous problem that we have in this country. I would strongly suggest, if you don't know where to give, go to sandyhookpromise.org. They have a website that you can go to. There's educational materials there. You can donate to help them if you don't know what else to do. I just think that there has to be a grassroots response to what we are seeing. And it's not going to go away because we turned the channel. I thought we had turned the channel. It was I didn't think there could be anything worse than Columbine. And we've seen that that's not true. I also want to say on the Uvalde case, everybody wants to say, well, the door was unlocked. Okay. And we all know people prop doors open in organizations. They're not supposed to. And, my first question, and I haven't validated this, is, was that a smoker? Propping a door open, going outside the building to smoke. And then my understanding is the person runs back in to get their cell phone. Was that so they could put something on social media instead of calling the police? When you've closed the door, there are just some really odd things that have happened here. I don't understand the police response or lack of response, but I think what we're beginning to see is that this violence in the streets is so inhumane. It's scaring people, even your police. They want to go home to their families. And when you see some crazed maniac in there shooting, you're having second thoughts about, who wants to die today. So while I know people are being very punishing to the police, these are very real questions you have to ask yourself. Is that a natural act to walk in front of a bullet? I don't think it is. I think that, if you don't respond with the right equipment, which you should, because you were told that there's a gunman going into the school, you don't show up without the right equipment so that you can save lives. So I hope that there's lessons in this for everyone. I know that as a parent, I'm glad that my children are not school-age children anymore. But I have many of friends that are educators that are going into these classrooms every day, and they need support. They don't just need support from parents. They need support from legislators. We need laws that protect people that are going into these classrooms, because if we do not, you are going to see a mass record number of teachers retiring. They're going to say it's not worth it. Many of them retired after they were forced to go into classrooms when they didn't have adequate PPE and protections against COVID. You are now going to see teachers saying these metal detectors are not enough, because it's not necessarily the students that are shooting, it's people getting into our buildings and doing this to us. And we as a society have to be angered and appalled by what we are seeing. I don't want to turn on my television and see another 10-year-old explaining to me that instead of doing his lessons, he's doing drills, putting his head under his hands. We have got to be outraged by this. I'm outraged by this. Write your congressman. Write a check if you can't write your congressman. We have to do something. And if we can't make changes, vote them out. I am a graduate, as many of you that are watching, of a public school system. I can remember going to school. My biggest fear was not having my homework. I never in a million years thought going to school would be deadly or be dangerous. I was taught that the world outside the school wasn't safe, but everything inside the school was safe. And now we're seeing that this cataclysmic shift, that our children now understand that they're not safe in a classroom. And it's not just our children, it's our educators. And it's sad.
On average, 20 mass shootings take place in the U.S. every year. Most active shooter situations are over in 10 to 15 minutes.
Suspect is armed.
No more swing sets, no more clowns. We've advanced to door stops and putting our heads down. Class photos are a thing of the past, replaced with shards of broken glass. Crying won't help, because you have to run. And it's all because America is obsessed with guns.